Hello, welcome to this AP Statistics Align lesson. Today we are going to be doing a hand calculation of standard deviation so that you can see what is happening in the statistics formula for standard deviation, and then we will be talking about what standard deviation means. Let's get started. Standard deviation measures how spread out the data points are from the mean. In AP Statistics, this is the most often used measure of variability, which we will explain more over time. We describe standard deviation as a measure of how much the data typically varies from the mean. Understanding standard deviation is vital because it helps us gauge how typical or unusual each data point is. For example, in our entertainment spending example, the standard deviation can show us whether someone's spending is significantly more or less on entertainment compared to their peers. We can tell whether their spending is unusual. Let's see how much the students in this class spend each week on entertainment, such as video streaming, subscriptions, music streaming, gaming, movies, etc. So you see this formula here. It says SX. What this SX stands for is sample standard deviation. It looks more complicated than it is. And so we're going to go through this step by step. I encourage you to take the notes that are pinned in the comment section on this. It's something that you won't have to calculate very often. We have a small data set here because it is tedious, but it does also help you understand what is going on in the standard deviation. So the formula, we're going to just start by step what you would need to do. The first thing you need to do is find the mean, the X bar. That means the sample mean, X bar. And so we're going to add up all of our data and then divide by the number in our data set to find the mean. So in this example, it's the mean amount of money that the students in this small class would spend on entertainment per week. So we add all of the values up and divide by 5. So their mean, their average of those 5 students is $15 per week. And that represents this X bar, just that X bar value. Step 2 is to find the distance from each individual data point. So student A, student B, student C, student D, and E, how far away from that X bar are they? So we're just going to take their value and we're going to subtract X bar. So that's now what's highlighted in blue. So I can take that for each of the students. So 10 is -5 away from 15. So we find all of those, and that is our xi minus X bar. Step 3 is that we're going to square those values. So when we're talking about standard deviation, we're talking about typical variation from the mean. And we don't care if it's a positive variation or a negative variation. So that's why we want to square it, because we are going to get rid of the sign. So we square those, and so you see that squared piece in the formula. The next step is the sigma. That means to add. Whenever you see this symbol, this capital sigma that looks kind of like an E, that means to add up. So we're adding up those squared differences from the mean. So we're going to add up the 0, the 9, the 25, and or the 2 25s, the 2 9s, and the 0, and we get 68. So that's the sum of the squared differences from the mean for our small, tiny data set. 5 is to divide by n minus 1. Our n is always going to be the number of individuals represented in the data set. So in this case, we have 5 students. So 5 minus 1 is 4. We divide by 4. All right, so when we do that, we take 68 divided by 4 and we get 17. Then you can see the final step would be to square root, because we want the typical distance, and we already squared, so now we're going to unsquare. And when we unsquare, we're just taking the positive there, so it's going to end up being the typical distance from the mean in our small sample data set. So it's our sample standard deviation, the typical distance in our sample from our sample mean. So that's this. So we get this 4.12 when we take that final square root. If you're finding this video helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button so that this tiny channel can grow. Then the next thing that we want to talk about is how you could see this on a calculator. So if you haven't looked at the video on how to calculate one variable stats on a calculator, I encourage you to watch that video, because it goes through step by step how you put the data into the calculator, and then you run one variable stats. And when you do run one variable stats, you're going to come up with this menu of different things, and you're going to see SX, and then we always are going to be interpreting what we are finding, and standard deviation is no different. So we interpret in context. And what is underlined here is the things that are going to just always stay. They often in word problems, like in multiple choice problems, are going to use this language of typically varies from the mean. And then it's going to be in context. So in our case, we were talking about how much students are spending on entertainment. High school students are spending on entertainment. And that amount that typically varied, we found that it varied by $4.12 from the mean, which was 15. So we found that mean of 15, and then we found our standard deviation, and we just have this word, typical varies. So having variation of $4.12 above or below that $15 was typical in this data set. For more AP statistics help, find us at advancedmathstats.com. Please like and subscribe. Stay curious, keep questioning, and remember, in statistics, understanding variability helps you make decisions.